Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Feng Sanniang. Fan Sanniang was the daughter of the magistrate of Tuan City. She grew up beautiful and had a talent for poetry and literature. Fan Sanniang's parents cherished her like a treasure. Whenever there were suitors, they would let her decide, but rarely did she find one she favored. That year, coinciding with the 15th day of the first lunar month, the nuns of Shuiwa Monastery held a Yulan festival. On the festival day, many women gathered at the monastery, and Fan Sanniang was among them. As she toured around, a young woman followed closely behind her, staring at her intently several times, as if wanting to say something. Fan Sanniang stopped and carefully examined the young woman, who appeared to be a peerless beauty of about 16 or 17 years old. Fan Sanniang was captivated by her and turned to gaze at her. The young woman smiled faintly and said, "Are you Miss Fan Sanniang?" Fan Sanniang replied, "Yes, I am." The young woman said, "I have often heard others speak of your beauty, and it seems they were all telling the truth." Fan Sanniang asked where the young woman lived, and she replied, "My surname is Feng, and I am the third in my family. We live in a nearby village." With that, Feng Sanniang held Fan Sanniang's arm, chatting and laughing with her in a gentle and tactful manner. The two developed feelings of admiration and reluctance to part from each other. Fan Sanniang asked, "Why did you come here alone?" Feng Sanniang replied, "My parents passed away long ago, and now there is only an old nanny taking care of me at home. She stayed behind today to watch over the house, so she couldn't come with me." Before long, Fan Sanniang prepared to return home. Feng Sanniang stared at her, almost on the verge of tears. Fan Sanniang also felt lost and invited Feng Sanniang to visit her home. Feng Sanniang hesitated, saying, "Your family is of high status and wealth, and I have never had any dealings with you before. If I go to your house today, it will inevitably cause gossip among the neighbors." Fan Sanniang insisted several times, but Feng Sanniang replied, "Let's talk about it in the future." Fan Sanniang did not press further and took off a golden hairpin from her head to give to Feng Sanniang, who in turn took off a green hairpin from her hairdo as a gift in return. After returning home, Fan Sanniang missed Feng Sanniang terribly. She examined the green hairpin carefully and found it was neither metal nor jade, and no one in the household could identify it, which puzzled her greatly. After that, Fan Sanniang waited eagerly every day for Feng Sanniang to come and visit, until eventually she became melancholic and fell ill. When her parents learned the reason, they had people sent to investigate in nearby villages, but no one knew who Feng Sanniang was. During the double ninth festival that year, Fan Sanniang had become thin and haggard, spending her days in listless boredom. With the help of her maid, she could barely manage to stroll into the garden to pass the time. As she rested on a cushion beneath the chrysanthemum garden, a woman climbed up the wall to peek inside. When Fan Xianyang raised her eyes, she recognized the woman as Feng Sanniang. Feng Sanniang called out to the maid, "Catch me." Following her instructions, the maid caught Feng Sanniang as she jumped down from the wall. Fan Xianyang was both surprised and overjoyed to see Feng Sanniang again. She immediately stood up, pulled her to sit on the cushion, and reproached her for not coming as agreed, asking where she had come from. Feng Sanniang replied, "My home is far from here, but I often visit my uncle's house. Earlier, when I said my home was in a nearby village, I was actually referring to my uncle's home. Since we parted last time, I have missed you so much. However, being poor and lowly, I felt ashamed to associate with you, a person of wealth and status. I also worried that your servants might look down on me, so in the end, I did not come. Just now, as I passed by your house outside the wall, I heard you talking in the garden, so I climbed up to look, hoping to see you, and my wish has come true." Fan Xianyang then explained the root of her illness to Feng Sanniang, who listened tearfully and said, "Today, when I came here, please keep this a secret. I'm afraid that someone will gossip and cause trouble, making our relationship unbearable for you." Fan Xianyang promised to keep it confidential. Afterward, the two returned to the house together, slept in the same bed, and happily confided in each other. Before long, Fan Xianyang's illness inexplicably healed. They treated each other as sisters in daily life, even exchanging clothes and shoes. Whenever someone approached, Feng Sanniang would hide in the closet. This went on for 5 or 6 months. One day, Mr. Fan and his wife heard some news. Fan Xianyang was playing chess with Feng Sanniang in the bedroom when Mrs. Fan unexpectedly walked in. She carefully examined Feng Sanniang and exclaimed, "Being friends with my daughter suits you perfectly." She then turned to Fan Xianyang and said, "Your good friend has come to our home, and your father and I are very happy about it. Why didn't you tell us?" Fan Xianyang relayed Feng Sanniang's intentions to her mother. Mrs. Fan looked at Feng Sanniang and said, "I'm glad you can accompany my daughter, but why did you keep it a secret?" Feng Sanniang blushed and silently fiddled with her dress. After Mrs. Fan left, Feng Sanniang wanted to bid farewell, but Fan Xianyang pleaded earnestly, so she stayed. One night, Feng Sanniang rushed into the house in distress, crying out, "I told you I couldn't stay here, and now I've suffered a great humiliation." Fan Xianyang asked her in surprise what had happened. Feng Sanniang explained, "Just now when I went out to use the restroom, a young man rudely lunged at me. Luckily, I managed to escape. But now, I feel deeply humiliated." Fan Xianyang carefully inquired about the man's appearance and apologized, saying, "Please don't be upset. That man is my foolish brother. I will definitely tell my mother about this and have her punish him with a cane." Despite Fan Xianyang's apologies, Feng Sanniang insisted on leaving. Fan Xianyang suggested she wait until morning to depart. Feng Sanniang said. My uncle's house is very close by. You just need to use a ladder to help me over the wall. Knowing she couldn't persuade her otherwise, Fan Xianyang sent 2 maids to escort Feng Sanniang over the wall. After walking about half a mile, Feng Sanniang thanked the maids and left on her own. When the maids returned, they found Fan Xianyang lying on the bed, sighing sorrowfully as if separated from her spouse. Several months later, one of the maids had business in the eastern village. On her way back that evening, she encountered Feng Sanniang walking with an old lady. Delighted, the maid greeted them warmly. Feng Sanniang, with a sad expression, asked about Fan Xianyang's well-being. The maid pulled on Feng Sanniang's sleeve and said, "Please come to our house. Our young lady has been longing for you as if her life depends on it." Feng Sanniang replied, "I also miss your young lady, but I don't want your family to know I'm coming. Go back and open the garden gate. I'll find my way there." The maid returned and informed Fan Xianyang, who joyfully followed the instructions. By the time Fan Xianyang reached the garden, Feng Sanniang had already arrived. They reunited, shared their pains of separation, and were deeply moved. Seeing the maid asleep, Feng Sanniang quietly moved closer to Fan Xianyang and shared a pillow, whispering, "I know you haven't promised yourself to anyone yet. With your talents and noble birth, you won't have trouble finding a respected husband. But many pampered heirs are arrogant and rude, not worth considering. If you want to find a suitable spouse, don't judge them by wealth and status alone." Fan Xianyang agreed with her words. Feng Sanniang continued, "Where we met last year is holding a Buddhist ceremony. Tomorrow, I ask that you make a trip there. I'll introduce you to a suitable young man. I've studied physiognomy since childhood, and my judgment of people is rarely wrong." At dawn, Feng Sanniang left Fan's house and arranged to meet Fan Xianyang at the temple. That day, Fan Xianyang went as agreed, and Feng Sanniang was already waiting there. They explored around the temple together, and afterward, Fan Xianyang invited Feng Sanniang to ride back home with her. Hand in hand, they walked to the gate and saw a scholar about 17 or 18 years old, dressed plainly in a cloth robe. Despite the lack of adornment, his handsome appearance and remarkable demeanor were evident. Feng Sanniang discreetly pointed at the scholar and whispered, "This person will surely become a talented scholar who enters the Hanlin Academy." Fan Xianyang glanced briefly at the scholar. Feng Sanniang then bid her farewell, saying, "You go back first, I'll follow shortly." As twilight fell, Feng Sanniang indeed returned to Fan's house and said to Fan Xianyang, "I've just gathered detailed information. That scholar is from your hometown, named Meng Anren." Fan Xianyang knew Meng Anren was very poor and hesitated to accept. Feng Sanniang said, "How could you fall into worldly prejudices? If this person remains poor forever, I'll pluck out my own eyeballs and never read fortunes again." Fan Xianyang asked, "What should I do next then?" Feng Sanniang replied, "I hope you'll give me something of yours." I'll take it to Meng Anren and propose marriage on your behalf." Fan Xianyang said. "Sister, how can you be so hasty? My parents are at home, what if they disagree?" Feng Sanniang said. "I'm doing this precisely because I fear they will disagree. If you stand firm, they won't be able to change your mind." Fan Xianyang still disagreed. Feng Sanniang said, "Your marital destiny has begun to sprout, but calamity has not yet been averted. I do this to repay our friendship in the past. Please let me go to the Meng family immediately and present your golden phoenix hairpin to Meng Anren in your name." Fan Xianyang was about to discuss it further, but Feng Sanniang had already left the house. At that time, Meng Anren was indeed in impoverished circumstances, but he was exceptionally talented and desired to choose a suitable spouse. Despite being 18 years old, he had not yet become engaged. One day, he saw two beautiful women at the temple and couldn't forget them after returning home. As the night was nearing its end, Feng Sanniang knocked on his door. When he illuminated her with a candle, he recognized her as the woman he had seen during the day and joyfully inquired about her. Feng Sanniang said, "My surname is Feng, and I am a companion of Fan Xianyang." Meng Anren was overjoyed and didn't hesitate to step forward to embrace Feng Sanniang. She declined and said, "I didn't come to find you myself, I came to introduce my companion to you. Fan Xianyang has agreed to a lifelong commitment with you. Please send a matchmaker to Fan's house to propose." Meng Anren was extremely surprised and couldn't believe it. Feng Sanniang showed him the golden hairpin. Overwhelmed with joy, Meng Anren swore, "Thanks to Miss Fan's high regard for me. If I cannot marry Miss Fan as my wife, I will remain unmarried for life." Feng Sanniang then left. In the early morning, Meng Anren pleaded with an elderly lady from the neighborhood to visit Mrs. Fan. However, Mrs. Fan, deeming Meng Anren too poor, refused the proposal without consulting her daughter. When Fan Xianyang heard the news, she was deeply disappointed and secretly blamed Feng Sanniang. Nevertheless, since the golden phoenix hairpin was irretrievable, Fan Xianyang resolved to honor her commitment. A few days later, a local gentry's son came to propose to the Fan family. Concerned that the proposal might not succeed, he begged the local magistrate to act as a matchmaker. The gentry held considerable influence in the area, causing Mr. Fan to feel apprehensive. He could only seek Fan Xianyang's opinion. However, Fan Xianyang expressed her unwillingness. When Mrs. Fan asked why she refused, Fan Xianyang remained silent, only shedding tears. She secretly informed Mrs. Fan that besides Meng Anren, she would not marry anyone else. Mr. Fan, infuriated upon hearing this, stubbornly agreed to the marriage proposal from the gentry's family. Meanwhile, Mr. Fan also suspected that Fan Xianyang and Meng Anren had already developed a private relationship. Therefore, he hastily selected an auspicious day for Fan Xianyang to quickly complete the wedding. Fan Xianyang was so upset that she couldn't eat and spent whole days lying in bed. On the evening before the bridegroom's arrival, she suddenly got up and began dressing herself in front of the mirror. Mrs. Fan was secretly pleased to see this. However, shortly thereafter, a maid hurriedly ran in to report, "Miss has hanged herself." The whole family was shocked, grief-stricken, and deeply regretful, but it was too late to change anything. 3 days later, the Fan family buried Fan Xianyang. Returning to Meng Anren, since the elderly lady from the neighboring house returned and conveyed the attitude of the Fan family, Meng Anren was furious to the point of despair. Yet, he frequently inquired about news from the Fan family, inexplicably holding on to hope that things could still be salvaged. When he learned that Fan Xianyang had been betrothed to someone else, he was consumed with anger and hopelessness. Shortly thereafter, upon hearing of Fan Xianyang's suicide by hanging, he was overwhelmed with grief and bitterness, feeling utterly dejected, wishing he could join Fan Xianyang in death. As dusk approached, Meng Anren left his home, intending to weep bitterly at Fan Xianyang's grave during the dim night. At that moment, someone approached him. As they drew nearer, he recognized it was Feng Sanniang. Feng Sanniang said to Meng Anren, "Congratulations, your good fortune can now be realized." Tears streaming down his face, Meng Anren replied, "Don't you know Fan Xianyang has already passed away?" Feng Sanniang said, "The good fortune I speak of is precisely because she has died. Hurry, go and call your family to dig up Fan Xianyang's grave. I have a miraculous medicine that can bring her back to life." Meng Anren followed her instructions, quietly dug up Fan Xianyang's grave with his family, opened the coffin, retrieved the body, and reburied the grave. Meng Anren personally carried the body back home with Feng Sanniang, placing it on the bed. After Feng Sanniang administered the medicine to Fan Xianyang, miraculously, after some time, Fan Xianyang indeed came back to life. Upon seeing Feng Sanniang, Fan Xianyang asked, "Where am I?" Feng Sanniang pointed to Meng Anren and said, "Look, this is Meng Anren's home." She then explained to Fan Xianyang what had transpired. Fan Xianyang finally woke up from her dreamlike state. Fearful of the news leaking out, Feng Sanniang led them to hide in a mountain village 50 miles away. When Feng Sanniang was about to bid farewell and leave, Fan Xianyang cried and begged her to stay and keep her company in another courtyard. They also sold the funerary jewelry for living expenses, managing to scrape together some wealth. When Feng Sanniang encountered Meng Anren, she would always avoid him and walk away. Fan Xianyang calmly said, "We are like sisters, closer than kin, but we cannot be together forever. I was thinking, why don't you and I emulate the ancient story of a Huang and Nu Ying, and both marry Meng Anren?" Feng Sanniang replied, "Since childhood, I have acquired extraordinary techniques through special breathing methods that grant longevity, so I am unwilling to marry anyone." Fan Xianyang smiled and said, "Countless techniques are rumored to exist in the world, but how many are truly effective?" Feng Sanniang responded, "The secret I possess is unknown to the world. Those handed down are mostly false, except perhaps for Huatuo's 5 animal play from 1,000 years ago, which is somewhat close. Those who practice seek only to promote the circulation of qi and blood. If hiccups are due to rebellious qi, with the right method, immediate relief can be achieved. Isn't this effective? Fan Xianyang then secretly planned with Meng Anren, asking him to pretend to be away. At night, Fan Xianyang insisted that Feng Sanniang drink wine. When she became intoxicated, Meng Anren stealthily entered the room and shared the bed with her. Upon awakening, Feng Sanniang angrily said, "Younger sister, you've ruined me. If I had kept my vow of abstinence, I could have become a deity. Now, I have fallen victim to your scheme, it's all fate." With that, she got up and took her leave. Fan Xianyang expressed her sincerity and apologized with a heavy heart. Feng Sanniang confessed, "To tell you the truth, I am actually a fox. That day, captivated by your beauty, I developed feelings of love. But now, I have ensnared myself and ruined everything. This calamity was caused by affection, unrelated to humans. If I were to stay here any longer, the affliction of affection would never cease. You still have many days to enjoy blessings, so take good care of yourself." With that, she disappeared before their eyes, leaving the couple amazed and astonished for a long time. A year later, Meng Anren passed both the local and provincial examinations, securing a position in the Hanlin Academy. When he presented his name card and visited Mr. Fan, the latter was filled with shame and reluctance to meet him. After repeated requests, Mr. Fan finally agreed to see him. Meng Anren entered, paid respects as a son-in-law, and prostrated himself humbly. Mr. Fan was infuriated and felt ashamed, thinking that his daughter had passed away many years ago, and suspecting that this was meant to insult him. Meng Anren pleaded for a private conversation and explained everything in detail. Mr. Fan remained incredulous and sent someone to investigate at Meng Anren's home, confirming the truth, which delighted him greatly. Mr. Fan secretly warned his family not to divulge the matter, fearing it would bring calamity. 2 years later, the local gentry was convicted of bribery, and both father and son were exiled to Liaohai Wei for military service. Only then did Fan Xianyang return home formally to visit her parents. The story mentions a Huang and Nuing, who are said to be the two daughters of Emperor Yao in ancient China. Both were married to Emperor Shun. After Emperor Shun's death, the two were grief-stricken and wept, staining the green bamboo with their tears, and eventually died of sorrow. Additionally, if you are interested in the Chinese traditional festivals mentioned in the story, you can look for them in the playlist to watch. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale. Feng Sanniang. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.